Hey guys, Chris here, and welcome to a new episode of Why Is. Today we're gonna talk about why is Sergeant Hammer suddenly back in the meta. So you might have seen more Sergeant Hammers in your Hero League games if you are playing a little higher up level, talking like Diamond, Master, and so on. But she also has risen in popularity throughout all the leagues. So why I'm saying suddenly back in the meta, it's actually not that sudden. Many people have seen her rise back into the game for quite a while. But recently we've seen much more Hammer in pro games, but also on pro streams. For example, Chris from Liquid is still one of the most viewed streamers in Heroes. So when he plays Hammer, obviously that can have some influence on some people. And he plays her amazingly well, so you definitely have to keep that in mind. Okay, so again, I said not so sudden. Why is not so sudden? Is actually pretty easy. She got her buffs, which changed a lot about the perception for Hammer on August 24th already. There was a balance update which gave her a couple of buffs. First of all, the thrusters, so her mount Z ability, is now always active in the Halls of Shrine of Halls, I don't know what it's called, in the core area here. It's always active. That is a very small and slight buff, but it is pretty cool because when you move out, you have this buff active as long as it normally is active when you activate it. So that's, let me check, 4 seconds, cool. So when you normally have to activate your Z to drive quick, this will always be active now. So this is especially helpful when you're Hearthstone back to your altars, or obviously when the game starts in the spawn. It's not very helpful because the doors are closed. But again, if you're Hearthstone back, or if you have died, you don't have to use your thrusters immediately, but you can obviously double dip and use the thrusters you get from the altar, and then use your Z to charge back into battle. The second buff is much more important. Artillery, her trait, now also gives Sergeant Hammer 20% more range. This was a talent beforehand on level 4, which was then removed. So not only does she get more damage to distant enemies, but also she gains 20% more range. This is important because you now can duel and poke without sieging. One of the issues that Hammer has is when she sieges, she's obviously a very juicy target because you can't move. So Chromie, Kael'thas, and everybody is very happy to see you in the siege mode. And then one last buff is on level 7. The hypercooling engines now reduce the cooldown by 15 seconds. This is actually not reflected by the tooltip, it's still bugged. So if you go and use it, let's see, we go focus attack on 4, and then hypercooling engines, let's just try it out. So normally you should have 13 seconds. Sorry, 15, no. Okay, let's start and do it slowly. So it says 10 seconds cooldown reduced, so it should be 20 seconds, but if you use it, you can see it's 15 seconds. So the tooltip has not been adjusted yet. As far as I know, this will be fixed hopefully pretty soon, because it's obviously a little confusing because it doesn't say that it's 15 seconds. But this is also very important because, as you can see, 15 seconds is not a very long time. I mean, even 30 seconds wasn't that long. But 15 seconds is even shorter, very obvious, duh. But it also means it's more of a short-term cooldown that you can use defensively or offensively. So with this you can chase heroes or you can get away much more easily. And you also have the ability to move around the battlefield much more quickly from level 7 on. Okay, so these were the 3 buffs that she got, which obviously is very helpful. But then we also had the changes to the mount speed, right? So the mounts are now slower, so every hero that has a mount is slower in the movement from top to bottom on a map, or in general coming to teamfights. This has buffed slightly every hero that doesn't have a mount and just moves on its own. So Hammer was always very slow beforehand, but now that the mounts are slower, she has caught up on the speed, right? And then with hypercooling engines, she obviously does even has more impact on her movement abilities. You don't always have to take it, but obviously with this, if you only have 15 seconds of cooldown, it's actually pretty sweet. So all heroes are slower, so the slow heroes are actually buffed a little bit. That also means, for example, Lunara at the moment is considered to be buffed quite a bit because she has basic movement speed a little higher than any hero, but always was slower than a mounted hero, right? So keep that in mind. That it's not only the buffs that we have seen for Hammer, but also the things that have changed for everybody else. On top of that, currently Auriel has risen into the meta. She actually had a very good release, always very popular. She has a pretty good win rate, and a lot of pros love her they choose her to be the solo support now, even. And with Auriel, you normally want to have one burst hero to fill her hope, and then also one sustain hero to fill her hope, because the burst combination obviously will have cooldown, so your Janas will have used their Blizzard, Cone of Cold, your Li Mings will have used their Arcane Orb and Arcane Missiles and everything. So once these are out, they're on cooldown and don't do any damage. So if you have a second hero that does sustained poke damage, Auriel gets a lot more hope and can heal a lot more, and Hammer is pretty perfect for that. On top of that, you might say, well, Raynor has similar range, he does the same thing, auto attacks and everything. Why is Hammer now considered better? So Raynor, first of all, I think has that little stigma of being a too easy hero, so people don't enjoy him as much. He's very point and click, and Hammer has that, that flair that she's difficult to play, which is true. But also that you can have more flashy plays with her due to her thrusters and everything. On top of that, Raynor doesn't have an escape, so he only has his healing from Adrenaline Rush, and while Hammer has the thrusters, but also the concussive blast that can has a pretty wide angle, so it's much better than Raynor's shot, because you just can hit multiple heroes even if they're spread out a little bit in front of you. Okay, so this is why Hammer has risen in the meta. These are the facts for that. And now we're going to jump into a replay to see how that plays out and how you can play Hammer in a game. I got a replay from Tastingo, who's a German streamer. If you haven't checked him out, you should. The links are in the description, so definitely give him a follow on Twitter and a follow on Twitch. He provided me with a replay because I don't play Hammer that much, so you would have not learned anything from my replay. So I decided to get one where actually something's happening. So let's have a look at that, and I will be right back. Okay, and here we are in the replay from Tastingo. Again, thanks to him for providing that. He's also somebody who plays Hammer a lot, and actually is very successful with it. So let's jump into this. You will see that he doesn't siege a lot, and this is something that I also had problems with to understand. When I'm playing since alpha, right? So Hammer was sometimes actually pretty OP, had pretty good stats sometimes, and also was considered to be a pain in the ass because of the siege mode and how strong she was, and she had a lot more health and everything. So for me, it was always weird to see Hammers not siege. But if you pause it real quick, there's actually pretty good reasons to not siege too often. So if you look at the siege mode, it becomes immobile, like the tank becomes immobile. You increase your attack range by 90%, and you deal 25% splash damage, and deal 30% bonus damage to minions and structures. So, why is it not that important to siege? Well, first of all, most of the time you want to hit heroes, right? So, if you hit heroes in siege mode, there's not much that's happening to them more than if you don't siege. You do 25% splash damage, that's pretty cool, but if they don't clump up, then you actually only hit one hero and do the same damage to them as you do in non-siege mode. Obviously, the range is a big factor, and we will see this later on in the replay. But sieging doesn't actually provide you with too much against heroes. So you don't have to siege if you don't have anything that, brings enemy heroes to you. One of the things you can already see here from the setting roll, he puts the mines into bushes, and that is something that he does quite a bit. And these are defensive tools. The mines don't do that much damage, but don't underestimate them. But they give you a lot of vision, and they don't have a lot of cooldown, so having them active in bushes and everything is pretty cool. So as you can see, he sieged up at the beginning because he already saw Kharazim on top, and therefore he knew that he could siege without a problem. He's now roaming up to Auriel, so that he can first of all provide her with hope, but also has some heal for himself, because Hammer is a very heal dependent hero. She doesn't play very well solo unless you leave her completely alone. Like if the enemy doesn't attack her, obviously, then she has a good time. So sieging here is not very risky. He has 2 allies around him. You can see an enemy mid and an enemy bot, so they can only be 3 people here. And most importantly, he has a healer here. So the second thing, obviously, is that he's sieging now, right? So he actually is in siege mode, but also attacking structures. So doing this is fine. Like, you can siege in these situations, but now if you can see, as soon as he doesn't know if, for example, the Haka is tunneling up, he actually will not siege at all. He uses thrusters here offensively to get some damage in. And then a good rotation from the Haka made him actually regret that, I guess. But you can see here he's very mobile. He's not staying in one spot. He's putting his mines down quite frequently, and then tries to just hit heroes. Let's have a quick look at the talent build that he did so far. So level 1 is pretty much a given. I think not a lot of people take Regeneration Master. As Hammer is not very mobile, it can be quite tricky to get those globes, and you're also not very good at taking mercenary camps on your own. So even on maps like Blackheart's Bay or something, it's rare that you get the quest completed. I don't think it also doesn't add very much to your hero. One of the issues that with Talons is that if something gives you more damage, you're more prone to take that. So yeah, Regeneration Master is not very popular. So, Advanced Artillery is, I think, the most picked talent on this tier. Gives you more bonus damage against long-distance enemies. That means you do more damage in siege mode, but also if you hit them on max range with your auto attacks, then they will receive more damage. Resistant can be pretty good against a heavy CC lineup, but it also only works in siege mode. That's something that rarely happens to you. I think siege mode, again, should not be used too much against CC-heavy lineups, so, reduce that damage taken is fine, but you're still CC'd, right? So, Ambush has a lot of cool things. I remember actually a Dunk Train video from ages ago where he juked somebody with Ambush and being in stealth. But you normally go for Advanced Artillery. On level 4, Focus Attacks is the best damage tool and is used on most heroes. It's a very generic talent, but is, a very good damage increase to your hero. This can also be a very good excessive force, especially against lineups that jump you. This can be pretty helpful, and also Vigorous Assault actually is not that bad on her because she does a lot of auto attacks and then therefore heals, and they do quite a bit of damage, so the healing is actually pretty significant. So as you can see, he's not focusing on the minions because first of all he has Auriel with him, who's pretty okay on minion clear, but also they have 3 opponents here now and there are only 2 because Greyman is doing the siege camp at the perfect time in 2 minutes. And there you can see he uses thrusters now because he wants to be there with for the first tribute. This is something that can be quite difficult if the spawn is bottom and you're top with Hammer, because obviously you don't want to use thrusters that much at the beginning of the game, but it also leaves you open like this, where you basically use thrusters to move a little bit faster to bottom, but then you suddenly don't have them active anymore. He has them back now, so as you can see it's only 30 seconds, so the cooldown is not that bad. And now they're spreading the bombs for Kathos. But as you can see, he's never sieging in these situations, in these fights, because it makes him immobile, and it would make spreading the bombs even worse. And as you can see, his auto attacks already do quite a bit of damage, so it's not like he's hitting with paper balls or anything. Like he hits for like 240 or something per auto attack, and the attack speed is also pretty good, so the focus attacks are up pretty quickly. And as you can see, he's hitting for 337 damage with the auto attack, which is focused. So Hammer has like 2000 HP, so you can see like 2 or 3 of these auto attacks against a Kel'Thas or a Falstad, and they actually will lose most of their life. So you've seen the first battle around the tribute. They didn't actually commit too much to it, and he never sieged up, which is completely fine. You don't have to siege in these situations, especially early on when you have heroics, to protect yourself, or to also soak, or for the tanks to peel for you. So there's no sanctification, there's no holy ground, nothing. So that's something that will... Nice dodge here with the thrusters. He heard Dehaka spawn, and then he just used thrusters to not be stunned. But yeah, like without heroics, it's not very useful to siege that early on, because you have nothing to protect yourself. Therefore, it can be actually quite detrimental to your hammering to siege up. Also, with sieging, you always want the enemy to run into you, and the enemies were already there and contesting the tribute. Therefore, he couldn't siege up in a good spot and make them pay for walking into him. As you can see, Auriel and Hammer together can actually take out Dehaka, which has quite a bit of a health pool. He's obviously not the tankiest one, but it was enough. And now that they won't get one kill, he channels Tribute through, and we're gonna go back to the laning. So at the beginning they took one lane down with Hammer and Auriel, and I think they should have done this more, but got a little bit distracted by kills and everything else. So they lost a little bit of that sieging power that Hammer can have with a healer. So they only got top wall and a little bit of the fort there. And Asim leaves Hammer alone quite a bit. I think it's a little bit of rotation, obviously also that in Hero League you don't have that much control over the rotations. Here he sieges now just to get the minion wave more quickly. So that's something that you can do if you know that the enemies are not close. You can definitely just siege up so that you do clear a wave much more quickly. This time the enemies have missed the rotation, so his team will get the tribute very quickly. The combination with Greymane, by the way, is also pretty good for Auriel, because Greymane does quite a bit of burst damage. And again, now he's sieging because they just want to get the fort and then move on. So if you have like the timing to do like a quick siege, where you get like 3, 4, 5 shots out of it, it's definitely worth it. You just don't want to siege and then unsiege right away, because you can't get an attack. Okay. On level 7, by the way, he took first aid. I know that he likes it much more than the hypercooling thrusters or engines. But it's, I mean, that's personal preference, but also something that I already brought up in a earlier video. In Hero League, sometimes you just want to have more sustain for yourself, because you don't want to have that issue that you trust, or that you need to trust your healer, and then you're left alone basically. So first aid is definitely viable, especially since, as I said, 30 seconds is not that long of a cooldown. So the thrusters will be available for most of all team fights. Obviously Curse Hollow is one of the biggest maps, so I think that the hypercooling engines would be pretty okay here. But it's not the end of the world. And this is one of the issues that Hammer has now. Even though she has the thrusters and the knockback, she can't really come to a fight where she's outpositioned. He outpositions himself here, but then is fortunate that his team can get a kill, because now he can just rotate back in. If the enemy team had more coordination, they would have just gone on Hammer, because she was out of position, and if they roam up 4, she's dead. That being said, obviously it's a third tribute, so the enemy curse is happening, or sorry, they're cursing the enemy, which, you know, obviously they wanted to prevent, so maybe being out of position wasn't that bad. Again, not sieging, just because there's 2 enemies there, and he knows that his team is going to be chasing them. So sieging just has that negative side effect that he isn't mobile, and as soon as his team jumps, he basically has to activate the thrusters, and then they're on cooldown. So if you can avoid sieging, just don't do it. Again, you have much range. You have a lot of range now, so it's very easy to not siege. This is a very good situation to siege, and let's get out of his vision and just move up a little bit in the camera. This is a good situation to siege because they have to move into them. Like, they have to move into here to stop them from destroying the wall. This is one of the best situations to siege, when you can force the enemies to basically go into your or go out of their comfort zone and move into you. Because whenever they move into that circle of death and pain, they're gonna get hit. Testingo explained that yesterday as well for the cast for the Nexus games. It's basically this circle of power for Hammer, and if an enemy walks into it and peeks his little head into that, you just shoot him in the head and do a lot of damage to them. So whenever you have a situation where you can set up your siege and the enemy has to walk into you to get the objective, to prevent you to do damage, that's the perfect setup for Hammer. With this boss, for example, now, they have to kill the boss, because if they don't, it will definitely take the keep. But with Hammer now in the back, they also don't... if he sets it up correctly, he basically will be in range to hit everybody who's meleeing the boss. So everybody who's melee will just get hit, and they don't have a lot of range on this enemy team. Faults that auto attacks are not that long. So again, sieging up. And he actually missed his siege mode there a little bit, because if he was sieging a little bit more in front, he would have actually hit the keep. Good gust, they're moving back, and now he's sieging up again. And as soon as they walk into this, he doesn't shoot on the keep anymore, he just shoots on the heroes. And this is where the splash damage is actually pretty insane, because now they have to fight in front of the keep. Let's move the camera again. Like, they have to move into this area here to actually fight. And as you can see, they're receiving a lot of damage from him. So sieging here is actually perfect, because again, they have to walk into him. And now you just poke him, do a little damage to them. Thrusters again are on cooldown, just use offensively, but it's fine, because they killed somebody, and they can retreat pretty easily. So as you can see, you can definitely still siege up with Hammer. I know that a lot of people have these, black and white opinions on you never siege with Hammer or you always siege with Hammer. There's obviously a fine balance, which makes her a very difficult hero to play, because you need to know these situations and you have to understand when is the right time to siege and when you don't have to siege. Let's have a quick look at the stats as well. As you can see, he's leading in hero damage and siege damage. For his team, for the enemy team, also siege damage from Falstad, he's doing quite a good job on rotating. But hero damage is pretty obvious that Hammer is on number 1. And with the focus attacks, he does so much damage to heroes like Falstad and Kel'Thas that it's very difficult for Medivh to use his protect shield effectively, because anybody who doesn't have the shield will just get hit. This is a perfect situation where I've seen other Hammers siege, because, oh, there's 4 heroes, I can do some splash damage. But the stutter stepping that he does here is really important, because he's following up on the other heroes, he's driving after them, so to say. And this enables him to do a lot of damage. Now he used the thrusters offensively, because he knows that he's pretty safe. Auriel has a lot of hope, so he gets heal for at least like half of itself, and he has first aid up. So fighting here without siege was perfect, because he was able to walk into the enemy and shoot them. You can't do that in siege mode. Siege mode, again, just makes you immobile, and then as soon as the enemy moves, you basically lost that fight, because you can't do anything anymore. You have to unsiege, maybe use thrusters, and then drive after them. And thrusters also has the issue is that you are quicker than normal. So if you're not used to Hammer and you put on thrusters, you might actually position yourself in a bad way, because you're like, oh, I'm just clicking here and drive here, and suddenly you're at that point much more quickly, and you get stunned by Kel'Thas or get a combo from somebody. So the nuances for Hammer is definitely difficult to grasp. You have to play her quite a bit to get as good at Hammer as Tastingo is or as Chris is. But don't get discouraged. The hero definitely has a lot of fun potential. Like, because of the sieging, you can have those funny games where the enemy just, sends one person down to your lane, and then you just, out-siege them and they can't do anything. And then they basically don't send anybody to help that person, and you just, go to keep with Hammer. And obviously in Hero League you can have a much better setup for her. And this is something that is also very scary with Hammer from this level on. Like on level 16, let's pause it real quickly, you have graduation range, for example, which allows you to siege, and then your range will get even higher and higher. So basically you can get up to 100% more attack range in siege mode, which is insane, because that circle of pain, this one here, is just gonna be lighting up, and you are gonna be just hitting everything that is inside, basically. I know that hover siege mode is something that a lot of people like, but the way that you should play Hammer here, with only sieging when it's necessary, it actually doesn't add that much value, because again, it only gives you splash damage and a little bit more range. And I'm saying a little bit, I know that's actually quite a lot more range, but you're still very slow. So I don't think that hover mode is that amazing. Gradiating range is also just only good if you have a team that can set it up. Like in this case, he has 2 warriors that are protecting him, which is amazing for this. And then also, don't use this if you never get into the situation, like to actually siege up and get the enemy to walk into you. Like if you're back, for example, you're like level 16 against 18 or 19, this will probably not give you anything, because you rarely have the chance to actually outplay the enemy team to get into position. So this is very position situational talent that you can use. Executioner obviously very good against or with heroes that have slows and roots and stuff like that. So Melf, Arthas. Well, Arthas probably the best one to have that. It's ridiculous. Like with Executioner and in siege mode, it does a lot of damage. My personal favorite when I'm back is Stoneskin, actually, because when you're playing from behind, you oftentimes, there you go, have the issue that the enemy team is very confident in what they're doing, so they will jump you and everything, and the more you survive, the easier it will be to kill them or turn the fight around. So Stoneskin together with First Aid can be pretty cool. Obviously it's something that can be difficult to pick, because if you don't take First Aid on level 7, which is pretty early game, then you most oftentimes don't have Stoneskin, or I don't have the choice to go back and pick it, because Stoneskin is on level 16. On level 13, there's a lot of things that you can pick. I actually like the Bullet Mines quite a bit from a defensive standpoint, and they knock back enemies, so you have another escape. I don't like Barricade that much, because it just, the wall is pretty okay, but it also leads to awkward situations where you don't lower the wall and then somebody can pass, and it's a little clunky in my opinion. And then Giant Killer, obviously very good against high health heroes. The enemy team actually doesn't have any, so First Strike is pretty amazing against them, because they have the range, but he hasn't been attacked that frequently. So First Strike is just good, and you can, especially with graduating range, you can have quite a cool combo where you just sit there and they can't attack you. Okay, so he's going into siege mode and you're like, hey, why is he in siege mode? He's pretty far away from the core, and now you will see why that happened. So he has used graduating range, and now you can see whenever a hero steps into his circle now, he will just hit everything. Like he hits here, he will now hit here the heroes. It's 363 damage per hit. So whenever they are in this range, he just has the unlimited amount of damage here. He can do whatever they want. And you can see he's hitting heroes because his team is protecting him. Now they're trying to go on him, but the core is already pretty low. And we're gonna pause it here real quick. So you've seen, like, this was a setup by his team. They knew what he was doing. They knew what graduating range would be doing to him. He would be stationary, he would need protection, but he would also do a lot of damage. On top of that, they had Siege Giants here, so these obviously help quite a bit when they attack the core, not like this dumbass here, who's not doing it. And then, obviously, in situations where you take the core like this, it can be quite helpful to have something that protects hammer. So sanctification is really good. Like, you just put it down here, you don't have to put it somewhere else, you just put it down there, and then everything is fine, because you can just shoot for like 3-4 seconds without getting any damage. So this was a great setup for them. Obviously also they still had their forts up, so everything is still up here. There's nothing that stopped them from getting team wiped and then lose the game. Even on like 18 to 16, even if they get wiped, having this lane, for example, in the bottom like opened, that will take them quite a bit. So pretty good fight overall, and then pretty good decision making from their team. So let's look who got MVP. I really like that it's actually in the replays now, and woohoo, it's Hammer. So you can see Dustingo, and I will say this in the nicest way possible, only has 9 kills, or 3 kills and 6 assists. But that means his participation was very high. As you can see, Dominator Aurel has that as well. So this means that he was there for most of the fights, and that's something that you have to do with Hammer. It can be quite difficult because of the thrusters and not mount, but now with the mount changes, it should be much more easy to do this. Okay, so to wrap it up, we will just go back one more time about the changes, and then things that you can try to learn from playing a little bit of against AI and quick match. So with the changes to artillery doing 20% more range, and then the mount speed changes, you have a very mobile hero now, which is funny because she was always considered to be a very immobile hero. On top of that, if you avoid sieging too much, you will be in a very good position to shoot at heroes that are in your range, which is already very huge. If you have Hammer, or if somebody picks Hammer, suggest to have Aurel in your team, because they work very well together. On top of that, never siege in situations where you don't see all the heroes of the enemy team. Only siege if you're very sure that you can escape. So for example, don't siege up if you just use thrusters and you don't see enemy heroes. If you want to learn Hammer, I actually really like to play versus AI against with her, because the enemy heroes, if you put them on expert, will actually come to gank you. And that's something that you can learn with Hammer, to look at the minimap. Because if you're stationary and you're sieged, you actually have the time to look at the minimap. You don't have to look at anything else, because the damage is so good that she just melts the minions and the towers. So you never have to be in the situation where you accidentally walk into the minions or in the towers. That will not happen when you siege up, right? So try out versus AI, go into quick match with her, some unranked matches before you go into Hero League. As always, don't take a new hero into Hero League right away. That's it for me. Thanks again to Dustingo for providing the replay. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you soon. Have a good one.